recent years, South Africa has witnessed an e-commerce gold rush, with the sector's share of total retail sales leaping from 1% to nearly 10% in just 5 years. This explosion has created a fertile environment for exit strategies where homegrown digital startups are acquired by established corporate giants or international players seeking to bypass the build phase and buy immediate market dominance. And joining me this week on Small Biz Evolution is the co-founder and managing director of Silvertree Holdings, Peter Allerstofer. Peter, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be on the show.
Well, Peter, Silvertree was an early investor in UCOOK before the full buyout. At what point did the transition move from strategic partner to 100% owner? And what made it at that time become clear that this is the next step that Silvertree had to take?
So we have been involved in UCOOK from the quite early days. So we have not been, I guess, part of the founding team, but we have invested very early stage. So as such, we've been part of the journey for a very, very long time, actually. Initially more passive, but always very close to the team. And then sort of around the COVID time or before that, I got more operationally involved. So started to play a bit of a co-CEO role and actually help the team as it was scaling up the business. And then essentially an opportunity arose of management team wanted to, do other things. They were still very young and we saw the opportunity to grow the business further. And that's really where we made the decision of increasing our stake and essentially buying out the initial founding team. And, obviously I've been involved from a long time and kind of knew the business really well. And we saw a lot of future opportunity to grow the business further.
And speaking of that evolving, how did you quantify the value of UCOOK's community and brand loyalty versus its physical supply chain and logistic assets?
It's a very good question. I think, I guess both things are really, critical to a business like UCOOK. Obviously, we pride ourselves of, having a strong following and a strong community. But, to some extent, that is also driven by, I guess, our supply chain that actually ultimately, delivers a great service to the customers and to our community and actually helps to foster the community. And maybe from a different perspective, when we talk about our community, it's not just actually, our consumers and customers that use our service. It's actually also our suppliers and other stakeholders. So when we speak about community, it's really holistic. And I think as such, our slogan is good food, good people. And that good people element, really speaks to the community and the broader community.
And Peter, when obviously making those transitions, how do you then balance maintaining a startup soul and culture while installing new executive leadership from a holding company?
Yeah, that's always an interesting transition. Again, having been involved for a long time, I was in a new phase to the business. I knew all the managers, I knew the levels below the managers, the guys on the ground. I was picking and packing myself in the warehouse to really understand the business and actually, not being perceived as just an external party. So when it came to the point of the transition, I wasn't sort of an external, I guess, element. So I was, well known within the organization. And I think that really made the transition not as hard. And as such, from our perspective, we also really understood the business and the culture within the business. And I think that helped us to continue the journey in a similar trajectory.
And just on continuing the journey, the UCOOK deal followed the acquisition of Granadilla Eats. Do you see the future of South African e-commerce being dominated by super platforms like Silvertree or Takealot that roll up smaller niche players?
So, to start off, I wouldn't call ourselves maybe a super platform. I think, I would position us as, more in the niche category. And I think it's great to hear that we are seen as sort of in that category. But I think, I believe there's space for both. I think there will always be the real big players, obviously, the likes of a Takealot, the likes of an Amazon, and they have a role to play. But as much as they have a role to play, we also have a role to play as the more niche players. And I think, they both can coexist and both can be very successful. And I think, we have different USPs versus the big players have other USPs. And I think it actually, it really works well together. And that's also what the customers actually want, right? Sometimes they just want convenience around having everything in one platform, but sometimes they actually want to be more going to a specialist where there's unique products, there's unique service. They don't necessarily get in the big super platforms. So I think in that sense, I think there's space for both.
Peter, and just to wrap up, you've famously said entrepreneurship is a marathon and not a sprint. Looking back at UCOOK's journey from a garage in Newlands to a 187 million rands exit, what was the most single persistent trait the founders had that others lack?
Very good question. I think if I have to think about it, I would say it's really the persistency. I think, starting a business from scratch and, scaling it up. From the outside, it looks amazing, it looks easy, but the reality is behind the scenes, a lot of things happen and things go wrong. And I think to be able to, if you fall down, to actually, get up and pick up the pieces and move on, I think is really critical, because in any business, you're going to face challenges. And I think the ability of persisting and, remaining and keep on going is really critical.
Well, Peter, thank you so much for joining us. That was the co-founder and managing director of Silvertree Holdings, Peter Allerstofer.